All right. Well, happy Friday out there. Welcome to another Fireside Fridays here, brought to you by the Delaware Entrepreneurial Center at Ohio Wesleyan University. I'm your host, Steve Flaherty, and today we are joined by Jay Clouse. He's one that if you don't know him in Columbus, Ohio, then you have probably been missing out on a lot of the events because Jay is everywhere. So excited to get started here. Join us, engage with us, and we'll dive in here in just a second. All right, so welcome to the Fireside Friday stage, Jay. So this is where we put the spotlight on amazing people that are doing awesome things. You're no short of that. I happen to be traveling out here in Pittsburgh, but was gracious enough to get a studio here and be able to spend some time with you today.
My man, glad to be here. Glad you're enjoying Pittsburgh. I was actually just in Pittsburgh earlier this week.
Gotcha.
I think so. Am I glitching out? Oh no. I don't know if this is my internet or Steve's internet. Well, we'll wait for Steve to pop back in. Hopefully. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with Steve and I here today. Feel free to put in the comments what you're doing today, what your Friday looks like, what you're excited to talk about. We'd love to chat about it. That's the thing about these streaming platforms. It's a challenging thing about going live. Steve, are you back?
I am back. So, can you hear me?
Maybe? I can.
Okay. All right. I don't know what happened. So you stayed on.
I tried to fill time. I wasn't sure if it was me, if it was you. I tried to fill time, but it was a little bit awkward, I'll be honest. Thanks for everyone watching who stuck with me.
Yeah, I'm not sure. My Wi-Fi is not the strongest apparently, but it's all right. We'll roll with it. So, well, I don't know all what you said during the time away, but usually we like to start off with just kind of an origin story, to let the crowd and the audience know who you are. So, if you want to start with that, that's great.
Oh boy, the origin story. This is actually something that I've been trying to think about more and make more concise. I went to Ohio State University. I stumbled my way into entrepreneurship by way of journalism and found my way into the startup community here in Columbus, Ohio. I attended a bunch of startup weekends. Then I started organizing startup weekends. Started a ticketing company with a partner based in Cincinnati. We went through an accelerator. We raised some money and ended up selling that company in 2015. Then I went and worked for a year at Crosschecks, now called Olive, which is recently valued at $4 billion here in Columbus, Ohio, as a product manager. Left Crosschecks in 2017 to go back out on my own and have been freelancing for several years, but more recently, I've really been earning my income as a creator. as a writer, as a podcaster, as an educator through online courses and workshops. So I've really kind of spanned the gamut of a lot of entrepreneurship, from pure high growth tech startup to freelancing to now digital creator. And it's been an interesting journey. It's been fun. It's really opened my eyes to the different paths of entrepreneurship and which ones I care about the most. And to expand on that a little bit, when I went to college, I actually didn't know anything about business. I didn't know that business is going to be my path. I had no experience with business. I thought that I wanted to be a professional writer, and I thought that that meant that I had to study journalism and be a journalist. So I joined the student newspaper at Ohio State called The Lantern and got a lot of practice writing stories. When I was there, that was the year that Osama bin Laden was captured and killed. It was the year that Ohio State was going through the Tattoo-gate situation where Jim Tressel backed away and a bunch of players got suspended. So I got some really intense experience doing that, but it taught me a whole lot about writing and how to be a good writer and how to be really efficient with my writing. Problem was, covering the Ohio State football team is like the epitome of sports journalism, like the pinnacle of sports journalism. And I had the opportunity to do that because I was a student at Ohio State. But once I graduated, it would be nearly impossible to get back to that same point and cover Ohio State sports as a journalist. And about that same time, I was meeting some friends in my dorm who had started businesses in high school, and they introduced me to the concept of startups and business. And I attended my first pitch competition with the Ohio State Business Builders Club. Absolutely loved it. Had a really bad pitch, like bombed the pitch entirely. And but the fallout of that was the way that pitch competition was structured. You basically could watch any of the subsequent pitches that happened in the pitch competition, but nothing before yours. Luckily, I was the first one to pitch. So even though I bombed, I got to watch 6 other student teams pitch their business ideas, and it just blew my mind, like completely blew the doors off what I knew was possible. Because here are people that are 19, 20, same age as me, making actual money with businesses and apps and things. I just didn't realize that that was possible for somebody my age, my position in life. I thought the path was you go to school, you get a degree, you use that major to get a job, and you work that job for 35 or 40 years, and then you retire. And I knew that wasn't interesting to me, but I didn't know what the alternatives were until the Ohio State Business Builders Club and entrepreneurship came into my life. Fast forward, we do the ticketing company. We go through an accelerator, we raise some money. We had some success there, but I also realized that startups weren't as sexy as I thought they were, and that startups were actually incredibly difficult. And if you're going to do a startup, you need to be taking like a 5 to 10 year time horizon, looking at this opportunity as something that you truly, truly, truly can't help but focus on and solve. Because if you don't have that level of interest and obsession, you're not going to survive the highs and lows that come with running a startup company. So that was a big learning experience. Thankfully, we had a good outcome with the exit. We were acquired, worked for that company that acquired us for a year. That was a very challenging experience. Earnouts are difficult. Exits are difficult. Aligning incentives with a company that purchases you is difficult. And afterwards, I was just really burned out. And I didn't want to just start another company for the sake of starting another company. I didn't know what that company would be. And so I said, you know what? I want to go learn from another entrepreneur. I want to learn from somebody else. I want to take a little bit of a break. I want to collect a paycheck. And luckily at the time, Crosschecks was hiring. They were hiring for somebody in a growth role. I signed on there. I worked directly with David Geiger and learned a lot from Sean Lane, the CEO. And quickly my role turned into a product role, which was more of my history. At Tixers, a ticketing company we started, I was in charge of all things product and customers and operations. And so that felt really natural to me. But I got a lot of experience at CrossChecks working within a larger product team because we had a large team of developers, we had product designers. I even at one time was leading a sales team of I think 11 people. So it's a really intense experience there also, learning how to do product at a high level, learning how to work within a team and lead a team and inspire a team. As a product manager, you don't actually have like explicit authority over a team. You're more so the cross-functional glue bringing people together to make things happen. And I enjoyed that, but it got to a point where I have an entrepreneurial itch. I have my own interests in doing things, and I knew that I was no longer going to be able to learn as much as I wanted to at CrossChecks. And so I decided to leave, go back out on my own. Wasn't sure what that meant. In the immediate term, that meant freelancing because, you know, I knew I wanted to be my own boss. I knew I wanted to make an independent income, and I had enough confidence that I could figure that out that I figured, okay, I'll just go and I'll freelance. That proved to be also pretty difficult and challenging in different ways. I started working with other business owners in a format that was kind of like a mastermind, a facilitated mastermind groups called Unreal Collective. I would work with 5 business owners at a time. We would meet every week for an hour and help them go from point A to point B over a 12-week period for their businesses. And I really, really enjoyed that work because the people that I worked with were incredibly talented people who could do great work, but didn't have a lot of experience as business owners. And with my product background, I just looked at their skill set as a product. I thought, you can do really great work. That is a product. What you need is to be able to package, market, and sell that more effectively. And that's what I'll help you do with Unreal Collective, this accelerator experience. I thought I would work with a lot of startup owners or startup founders. It turned out that I worked with more creative service professional, people who were freelancing themselves, doing design, copywriting, development, things like that. And I did that for about 4 years, and we built a really, really great community out of that. A little over 100 people who went through that 12-week experience. We supported each other. We grew a lot. We learned a lot. And along the way, I was beginning to develop my own digital products then to help people with freelancing, courses now on podcasting, on community building. And now, after all that time, I find myself doing a lot more digital products and running a creator business. Steve, are you still with me?
There we go. All right. Sorry, I had to click the right button. Yeah, no, I mean, and you tell the story, and you're doing about I guess half of everything that you have done, right? And then you would think that like this is a career over decades or whatever, but I mean, you just turned 30, right? So, and I mean, what you've been able to do in that time, I think that's what's phenomenal. I mean, you go around town, everybody, I mean, even before I met you, everybody's like, have you met Jay Clouse? I'm like, no, I keep hearing his name, so I got to find this guy. But I mean, getting exposed to that at the collegiate level, Ohio State's a big university, lots of different organizations that you can go get involved with, right? I guess, how getting attached to Business Builders Club, what was that original, like, oh, that sounds really cool, as opposed to, the social media club? I don't know.
Well, it was 2010 or so, and everybody had an app idea, and I had an app idea, and my friends told me, that's pretty good. You should pitch that at this pitch competition. If you win, they'll give you $3,000. For someone that was 20 years old or something, I was like, oh, that sounds pretty good. I won $3,000. But it was really the experience itself, seeing other people who were making actual money with their businesses, that just blew my mind. Couldn't believe that was possible. So yeah, that experience, in full was like what really got me there.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, can be any age, right? But seeing that you can use your skill sets, however advanced or novice they may be, right? But putting it out there, creating, entrepreneurship, the startup term gets thrown out there a lot, right? And it's like, oh, it's a startup. And, you think you have to be this high tech, software with SaaS and, high growth and go out and raise a bunch of money from rich people, and then be 5 years in the trench to success, right? And there's so much more to entrepreneurship than that. And you've tapped into, I think, a market and shown a lot of people maybe getting past that fear of them, like, well, what assets do I possess that could actually be marketable, right? And that goes back to your product, background and everything, and looking. I liked how you said, you looked at the person, right, as the product. What are their skill sets? And a lot of the times, it does take another lens, right, to be able to let people know, how to sell themselves. So, but I guess, what lessons have you learned with people that are looking or on that edge, that have thought about it, for months or years, whatever? What's the push over to go into work for yourself, entrepreneurship, whether it's on the side, freelancer, whether it's doing a startup?
I think it starts with just, you have to really want to do it, because it's really hard. And if you don't really want to do it, you're going to give up. And so why even don't tell yourself that you should do this and do it because you feel like you should. Like, you should only get into entrepreneurship because you can't help but get into it, because it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really challenging. It's not the fastest way to make money. It's not the easiest way to make money. There are much safer, more comfortable ways to earn a really good living. Chances are you have most or all of the skills you need to get started right now. Because if you're working with clients in particular, you just need to be better at the particular skill set they're hiring you for than them. And that's not a high bar most of the time for you to be able to say, I'll do this for you. Here's the cost. What it really comes down to a lot of times is the ability to sell yourself confidently, and, convince people that you are the right person for the job, whether you're freelancing or whether you have a product or, any form of entrepreneurship. You're just constantly selling yourself, your ideas, your product. And that's a learnable skill. It's not something that you should expect to be really good at if you've never done it before. It's like anything else. You're going to start bad at it, and you have to learn how to do it. But if you do get good at selling yourself, selling your ideas, selling your product, that's like the most valuable, transferable skill I think you could possibly learn. And any skill that you feel like you have a deficit in, whether it's selling, whether it's marketing or copywriting, whatever, you can get through a lot of those deficits purely with resilience in the beginning. Like, just being willing to fail and start over and get better. Nobody, picks up a basketball and can become just a starter on the varsity team if you haven't practiced. Everything takes practice. Everything takes experience. And you only get through to the stage of mastery or competency with a lot of experience.
Well said. So, and I think, so you've been one that has juggled many balls at different times. Having all that you have going on, so you've been multiple podcasts now, but starting in that, evolving, learning. I'm sure if you look back at your very first episode, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know what I didn't know then, right? But being able to juggle, careers, freelancing, the different experiences that you've had with the podcast and all that, what tips or secrets do you have for people that are maybe tackling more than one thing, and how that's able to be done?
A lot of people will talk about time management, and time management is a component, but even more importantly, I find, is energy management, because you're going to be able to more effectively do certain types of work at certain times of day. Maybe you're a night owl and you love writing or creating or doing your core work late in the evenings. Maybe you're a morning person like I am. In the morning, I can do an hour's worth of work in 20 minutes, just because my brain is fresh, I am firing on all cylinders, I can be more effective. So managing multiple things is less about pure time management and more about leaning into the rhythms that you can do most effectively. But at the end of the day, it comes down to commitment. It's very attractive to think about building a creative habit, a creative writing habit, or a habit of going on YouTube or publishing a podcast. But the word habit, I think, makes it feel like you can automate this behavior and it becomes really easy. And in my experience, especially in a creative realm where you're making things, there's no automated way to make that happen. Like it's always going to require some willpower. It's always going to take some work. And being a creator and showing up and making this stuff is making the commitment to yourself, to the people who follow your work, that you're going to show up and do the work. And you have to respect that. It's a sacred commitment to yourself, to those people. You have to really embrace deadlines and not compromise on the idea that when I make a promise that I'm going to make something by a certain date, I do that. And you do that for years. It takes a long time for people to know that you're starting to create things, for people to care, for them to take you seriously. So many people start things and flame out immediately. I think societally, we're slower to celebrate people who start things or pay attention to people who start things because we subconsciously think that's not going to last. Why should I care? Sometimes it takes literally a year of publishing for even people close to you to realize, oh, you've been doing this? You've been doing this for a year? How did I not know? Because we're all really self-absorbed and looking at our own stuff and aren't paying as close attention to you as you may think or hope.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, it's everybody, it seems, is busy, right? We all lead busy lives, especially those, that are in entrepreneurship already. Those are some of the busiest people that I know. Every time I think that I'm busy, I look around me and I'm like, good God, like, I feel like I need to keep up, right? But you've had the privilege to interview a number of entrepreneurs from all across the country, all different industries, work in, now Ohio's, most valued startup company, right, in history. So over at Olive, which, you started it when it was at Crosschecks, and then I think that was one of the ultimate, entrepreneurial pivots. And kudos to Sean Lane for what he's been able to do over there. But you've been behind the scenes. You've talked to entrepreneurs. Do you pull out any nuggets? Is there like a J. Clouse list of like 3 things that you've noticed that are like the common thread or trend amongst the entrepreneurs? I mean, you've talked kind of a little bit about that stuff, but I'm just curious of what you've seen across your broad spectrum and exposure.
I have actually thought about this quite a bit, and the 4 things that I see most often are patience, ambition, commitment, and resilience. And I've already talked about several of those here. Ambition kind of has to be there, because if you don't think big, like you're not gonna achieve big. So the most successful people are thinking pretty big. They want to do this thing. They have that compulsion. I can't help but do this thing. But it takes time, and they have to be patient to fight through all of the trials, all the challenges. That's where resilience comes in, and it's a commitment to the work. It's showing up. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and he had this idea, like, instead of just showing up every day, his frame is don't quit every day. Because showing up is kind of passive. Like, it feels like, okay, I can come here, I can be here, but are you really showing up fully? Are you really engaging deeply? Going through the motions isn't enough. So it's not just showing up, it's actually not quitting. It's actually like going full bore every day, even though every day it's going to feel like a challenge. And every day you might think, this is too hard, I just want to quit. Well, if that day you convince yourself not to quit, there's another rep. There's another piece of the cycle. Just do it again tomorrow. And do it and do it and do it. Yeah, I think it's those 4 things. Patience. I like it. I like the order of ambition, patience, commitment, and resilience.
No, good. Well, so the overnight success thing, right? I mean, that's it's the patience. Everybody sees, they're busy, like, oh, I didn't know you were doing that, and they see, the headlines, right? As opposed to all the stuff that went into it. But with the podcasts, so you've got your, not, I don't feel like it's new anymore, but it's probably new to people because to that point, not everybody knows what we're all doing, right? But tell a little bit about your creative elements and what, where that came from and kind of what the premise behind it is.
Sure. Well, my first podcast is called Upside, and actually Steve, you and 1 Million Cups helped me get that off the ground to show people that, hey, this is what we're doing here in Columbus. Upside is a podcast focused on startup companies that are pre-Series A, that are based in cities that are not San Francisco. And that was a really, really great learning experience, which we're still doing that show to this day. We wanted to talk to founders, talk to entrepreneurs, almost as if we were investors, kind of evaluating the company, seeing what we like about it, what we don't like about it. But we're about to publish our 300th episode this coming week of Upside.
Wow.
Sorry, 200th. 200th. Big difference. 200 episode this week of Upside. And I learned from that experience that I love creating audio. I love podcasting. My business personally has grown in the direction of helping people get paid for their art and creativity, whether that's freelancing, whether that's podcasting, whether that's being a digital creator like I am. And I wanted to develop a new podcast that is aligned with that mission and that vision. And so I kind of took what I learned from Upside, and I also took this asset that I had, which is relationships with some really impressive, cool creators who I had no reason to collaborate with before this, and said, what if I just make a podcast for creators, interviewing some of these top creators about how they made a living from their art and creativity? Because a lot of these people, they do a lot of interviews and they talk about their work. Seth Godin is episode 1. Seth Godin does a ton of interviews talking about marketing, talking about branding. What he doesn't talk about that much is how he built a business around being a writer, And I want to talk to these people about how did you get to that point? Because that feels like the new American dream, is being a creator and just getting paid to be yourself, getting paid to do the work that you want to do. And so I wanted to turn the mic around on a lot of these people and say, like, how does you build a business behind this? And that's where I'm putting a lot of my creative energy these days. That's where I'm having a lot of fun. And it's been really well received. People really love that show. They tell me all the time, this is my favorite show, which is the highest praise a creator can get about something that they make. So yeah, that show's just over a year old, about a year and 3 months old.
Yeah, no, well, and so, I mean, you kick off with a rock star. And Seth, and I think I remember you posting about that time, like, oh my gosh, I've got this, amazing interview tomorrow. Ultimately, I mean, that's like, a peak for some. So that's the starting point for Jay Clouse, which is awesome. But
the starting point was Upside. The starting point was doing 100 episodes on another show.
That's true. So I'm saying for the new show, but yes. So, one, I guess, multifaceted question, because I think there's, podcasting's been around obviously a while. But I think every day people are like, man, this is, I love, exactly like you do. Like, I love creating audio. I love being able to spread, whatever my, lens or take on the world is. There's some that probably like, well, what do I have to offer? I'm not the expert. And then, kind of the question, is it too late? Is it too, populated? And I'll throw it to you for the answer.
I mean, no, of course not. Even if the market was saturated, like, there's always going to be new people who catch on. But the big thing is like you need to be doing work that resonates with people and that truly helps people. Um, the bar of quality that people need and expect gets higher all the time. But there's plenty of space to grow in this world. YouTube has around 30 or 31 million channels, and there are still less than 2 million podcasts. So it's not an apples to apples comparison, but that should at least show you that there's still a lot of room to grow in podcasting in particular. We've seen more people start newsletters over the last year and a half than many years previous to that. I think email is still here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And there are new platforms starting all the time. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. You can build anywhere. So if it's calling to you and you're compelled to try to build a lifestyle in this direction, I think you owe it to yourself to try. There's plenty of room out there. You don't need to be Joe Rogan and have the biggest podcast on the planet to carve out a beautiful little business for yourself and lifestyle for yourself. But it takes time. You're going to have some patience and you're going to have some commitment. And so the sooner you start, the better.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, we all have our own, hobbies, likes, takes, right? And yeah, to your point, you don't have to get the biggest audience. You're just going to get an audience, right? So, I mean, no matter, whether it's a million viewers or two, right? You've got people that are like, that's my guy, that's my gal, right? And they're listening, they're identifying, and then, who knows where that leads? I mean, you've been able to, roll, podcasts into other podcasts and then into a career with probably one of the top podcasters out there, over with your work at SPI. If you want to chat at all about that, some people may know the name Pat Flynn, kind of one of the, I'd say, early podcasters that kind of really, and his came out of, losing his job, right? And what am I going to do? I got, family coming and all that. So, but talk about your connection and how you've evolved over there into the SPI.
For sure. Pat is one of the originals, for sure. He was let go from his architecture job in 2008. He wasn't sure what he was going to do. He started by making an ebook, a digital product, helping people pass the architecture exam. That thing started selling like crazy, and then he started writing online to document how that business was growing and how well it was doing. And in 2008, that positioned him really well to help start kind of the affiliate marketing and email marketing trend that we've seen over the last 10 years. He started his podcast in 2010. It has more than 60 million downloads. Incredible guy. Just a very genuine guy, too. A lot of these online business people, not great people and not genuine. And Pat is truly the opposite. I mentioned a little bit about Unreal Collective, and I worked with a little over 100 business owners through that 12-week program. We built a community of about 105 people. One of the people that I worked with was Matt Gartland, and Matt is Pat's business partner. Matt and Pat merged companies. Matt was running an agency here locally, working with high-profile creators like Pat. He was working with Pat so much that as an agency owner, it was actually dangerous to have so much of his team's capacity dedicated to one client. And so he approached Pat about coming together to build a new company where Matt's team became an in-house creative team for Pat. Pat was still just a solo creator at the time, and they built SPI Media. They, in 2020, decided that they wanted to make community and bringing their audience into a more intimate, private setting where they can communicate with each other a priority for the business. And they hired me to come in and consult a little bit on that effort. I helped them make their first hire on the community team. Her name is Jill. She's wonderful. She's incredibly talented. And towards the end of last year, we started talking about what would it look like for me to stay on and join the team in a very serious capacity to help grow the entire community discipline within SPI. And I didn't think it was going to be possible. I just had too much in flight and I didn't have time. And they said, well, we would be interested in acquiring Unreal Collective, the brand and the community, to bring them into our community. It's a very similar audience, and give you the space to lead our community effort full time. So I work with SPI for most of my week while still building my own independent business on the side, which is one heck of a juggling act because I'm creating a lot and my business is doing better than ever. But we're doing some really interesting work over at SPI in terms of building a roadmap for how to build a membership that does really well. We're doing some really cutting edge things with the community there, but also our course communities. And now doing live cohort-based courses, all of which, my team and I are working on all the time. So that's been a fun evolution, a much better experience after acquisition than Tixers, the first company, thankfully. I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's so much to unpack with you. I mean, of all the things that you've been able to do, and I get it as well, and I'm sure you do as well as well, you've got your hands all over different places, whatnot, but in your mind, I mean, are they all kind of interconnected and interwoven I mean, whether it's a personal brand or whatnot, I mean, I feel like each separate thing that I do connects and leads to things in the other things that I'm juggling. So therefore, I feel like they're all interconnected.
Yes and no. I think they could be more connected, and I'm actively working to make them more connected because there are some efficiencies that if you're going to do this many projects, let's just call them projects, you'd want more efficiencies than I've had historically, but it's a process. You look up to anybody and you see their business, you see what they built, and you aspire to it, and you start comparing yourself to it, and you think, I've got to build it all right now and do it perfectly and set it up all correctly. The reality is you got to start somewhere, and then you're going to build a bunch of stuff, and some of it's going to die, and some of it's going to change a lot, and then you'll bring things together. Like, nobody has a perfect path where everything is maximally efficient in setting this all up and getting it rolling. Like, you're constantly going to be changing things, augmenting things. And I've been in a period of 3 years of just building, and now like there needs to be a period of consolidation, of revising, of finding more efficiencies, of just making everything more polished. And that takes time. Like, you shouldn't expect yourself to go out of the gates and have all these things and have them perfect. I see a lot of people looking at what we're building at SPI, and they admire that and they aspire to it, and they start building something similar, and they forget that we have a team of 12 people.
Right.
You may be one person, you may be a small team. It's going to take more time to build something than a team that has more resources. You got to give yourself some grace and have some patience with yourself and let yourself take the time to figure it out and pull it all together. But I'm in a phase now where I am thinking a lot about how do I make all of these efforts tie together more nicely and superpower each other and grow faster instead of making everything feel like a new project, a new thing.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, to your point, I mean, delayed gratification, right? I mean, everything is so instant in our world now that sometimes we forget that the people that we follow on Instagram or that we see with the success, that somebody started in an apartment before they bought that big fancy house, right? And there was a lot that went into it before they do all that. And delayed gratification is, real and, smart because if you try to do too much all at once, odds are not in your favor. So it's kind of that those small builds, and I'm sure you're using the exact same microphone now that when you started your podcast, right?
No, you can see there's up over here. There's old microphone is here.
Okay. So it evolves, right? I mean, you can't unless money is no object and time is no object and team is no object or whatever. You can't just go out and capture the world overnight. And totally. I think that's one of the. So I think that builds a barrier, though, right? So where people get overwhelmed and like, oh man, I could never go do that, or oh, who's going to listen to me on a podcast? There's so many out there that are, just like what I would do. And a lot of the times it's just about that start, that spark, right? And just start somewhere and then take the small bite at a time.
Yeah, because again, you're going to be bad when you start. It's just the reality of it. And even a year, 2 years in, like, you're still going to be bad in some ways.
Yeah.
Any overnight success story you see is either misrepresented, and that's usually the case. It's usually misrepresented, and they're not factoring in a bunch of other time that was very relevant and very important before that, or it's completely atypical, and you should not expect it for yourself. More likely, you're going to make stuff, and you're going to be bad, and not a lot of people are going to pay attention, and that's okay, because that gives you the time and freedom and psychological safety to fail and learn what you care about and what you're good at. Because if you went out of the gates and you could command attention of 1 million people and your stuff wasn't very good, you're just going to get hated on and trolled really hard. And that's not something you want to endure. So, it's good to experience success when you're prepared for it.
Yeah, there's a comment there from Cole Nixon. He was one of the students in the class that you talked to in the fall there. And he's actually, I think you were probably one of the inspirations there. He started his own podcast that he's doing thriving now. So with it, I mean, he's done a great job on it. So kudos for taking the bull by the horns. So that's also his logo. So, but and running with it. So, but well, Jay, we appreciate the time that you have given us today. But as people are out there looking, I mean, one of the things at the center, we help people with small businesses, we help people with startups, but just, it's more about mindset, right? Entrepreneurialism is a mindset that even if you're a corporate person, in a career and don't want to change it, you're happy, that's perfectly fine. But what would you say as some kind of closing advice or whatever as, frame of mind for personal growth or achievement?
Think long term. If you're thinking short term, you're gonna have short term success. If anything, you need to think long term, because especially in this world of content creation, nothing happens quickly. You may get some quick hits and some wins. Maybe you write something that gets shared a bunch, and that's awesome. But if that happens, what happens next? You just got a bunch of new subscribers. They're expecting more work from you into perpetuity. So you have to think long term, or even if you do catch a lucky break, you're not going to be able to capitalize on it. And that can be really heavy. That can feel depressing or oppressive, but it can also feel really liberating to know that this one thing I'm struggling with right now, in the scheme of things, isn't going to matter. You're going to get through it. You're going to survive, and you're going to have to show up again tomorrow and not quit, and do that into perpetuity. So get started.
Great advice. So you can connect out there in Twitter sphere there with Mr. Clouse. Jay, any other ways to connect with you for people?
If you like this, you would like my writing, go to jclouse.com, sign up for the email list there. Would love to share that with you.
Perfect. So, well, and go look at Jay. You got multiple areas that you can find him with the podcast out there. Check it out. He's always been willing to lend an ear and help others, and lots of content, right? That you can, not even have to have a conversation with him and learn a lot. So, Jay, always a pleasure. So thank you very much for joining us on Fireside Fridays. Everyone out there, have a wonderful Friday. I will be back with travels. We got another one of these next Friday. So tune in 1 p.m. Eastern for the Delaware Entrepreneurial Center Fireside Fridays. Pleasure, Jay.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everybody.